Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region has entered its 13th day. And in the latest, Ukraine has destroyed another strategic bridge on the Seym River. To talk more on this and perhaps Ukraine's bigger ambitions and goals in the ongoing war with Russia, we're now being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant. He was the former advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine, and he's joining us live from Latvia. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION, Colonel Grant.
Thank you.
Now, the Ukraine-Russia war has been going on for 2 years, and now there are growing concerns regarding an attack near the nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, with both Russia and Ukraine blaming each other. Your assessment of the current situation on the ground and perhaps the risk of a nuclear war coming out?
Well, I think the first thing I would start with is that this is probably the most complex period that we've had since the beginning of the war. I mean, before it's just been Russia attacking and Ukraine defending, with a few times when Ukraine managed to go forward. But this is a deliberate attack by the Ukrainians into Russian territory. And that's the first time that Russia has been attacked since, invaded since the Second World War. So it's obviously causing a lot of problems. The battle space is in two clear areas at the moment. Firstly, the one area is still that you could call it the historic eastern side in Donbass, Donetsk area, where the war is still going on just as hard as it has been before. And in fact, Russia is still pushing forward. But up in the north now, where Ukraine has invaded, Ukraine has taken over 1,000 square kilometers of land from Russia. But hey, they don't seem to be heading towards the nuclear power station at Kursk. It seems to be more a right and eastward leaning attack, possibly towards trying to cut off the troops, the Russian troops that have actually started to invade Kharkiv. But it's impossible to tell at the moment. It really is impossible because the government has not given out any clarity about what it's doing. And well, we know why it's doing it, but what it's doing.
Right, Colonel Grant, I was just coming to that, that with Ukraine claiming 1,000 square kilometers inside the Russian territory, what, according to you, is Ukraine's bigger plan in its ongoing counteroffensive in the Kursk region? Because you've clearly lamented that Ukraine does not plan on attacking the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Then what is it trying to do at this point in time?
Sorry, it's not the Zaporizhzhia power plant. It's the Kursk power plant. Zaporizhzhia power plant is the one down south near Zaporizhzhia. So these are two separate power plants. The Kursk power plant is owned by Russia still, and the troops are 40 kilometers away from this. So what are they intending to do? That is a good question. I think you've got three choices. One is they can keep going, and that's the obvious choice at the moment. But it's becoming harder because the Russians are beginning to pour troops, and there is now, instead of it being porous, there's now becoming a hardened line around the Ukrainians, like a defensive line of Russian troops. That's one. The second thing is that the Ukrainians pull right back to their own borders. I don't think they'll do that because even the public won't allow it, for one thing. And the second thing is that they pull back slightly into a good defensive position and hold the land, hold the ground, and then just basically say, Russia, come and get us and push us out. That would give them territory that they can then trade against the territory that Russia has stolen down south. So these are political options.
Colonel Grant, I do agree that the Kursk nuclear power plant is under Russian control, and so is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But coming to the next question, are you confident that Ukraine will be able to withhold the victory and the gains that they have made on the battleground for negotiations moving forward? Because we're getting reports right now that Russia has dismissed all claims that say that Kiev and Moscow will be sending their respective delegations to Qatar for negotiations.
Yeah, I don't think there can be any negotiations at the moment, because Russia doesn't want any negotiations yet. I think that Ukraine would have to do a lot more before Russia actually realized, or Putin accepted, that actually that this is a much more serious game than he first thought. I think they still think they until 2 or 3 days ago that this was an incursion like the previous ones by the Russian Legion, but it's not. This is a serious incursion. Will they go to Qatar? I don't think so. Or if they do, it will only be initial talks, because I don't think Russia wants to give up yet, because it's still making gains down in the Donetsk region, so, and could break through there. So why would it do anything?
Russia has called the Ukrainian incursion a major provocation, and it has vowed to retaliate with a worthy response. What response can we expect?
I don't see it being a nuclear response, because Russia's not so far back on its heels that it needs to actually use nuclear weapons. It's more likely to be more attacks by missiles that they're getting from North Korea and Iran, more attacks by missiles and drones into Ukraine itself as sort of punishment, attacking more schools, hospitals, power facilities, and maybe even starting to try and attack the government itself.
My last question to you, Colonel Grant. Ukraine is also urging Western nations to lift restrictions on the weapons donated to Kiev so that they could perhaps use those weapons, like the Storm Shadow weapons donated by the UK, to strike targets deep inside Russia. How do you see that panning out in the ongoing war? And do you think that it will change the tide of the war?
That's a good question. I don't see it changing at the moment. I mean, the Americans seem absolutely adamant that they will not allow deep strike into Russia. They've changed their minds before, but I don't see that this still is sufficient for them to change their mind on this point. And it's needed. It's needed badly, because, of course, Russia has freedom of movement with its logistics, whereas Ukraine doesn't. So arguably, you could say America is putting restrictions on Ukraine, but not on Russia, as far as the fighting is going.
Right, Colonel Grant, thank you so much for taking out time and joining us on WION with your insights on the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war.
Thank you very much for asking. See you soon.